Over the weekend, I had this question come into my head, which was, what are the things that the version of you that you most respect, what are the things that he is doing that you are not? And it sparked some interesting contemplation on my side. I think it's a good just frame to bring up every once in a while. Like, okay, there's the version of me that I know that I could be and that I'm headed toward and that I would like to be. And maybe all that separates me from him is what I am doing or what I'm expressing, how I'm expressing in each area of my life. So, like in business or in relationships, in my physical fitness, my health, all those things, like the major buckets that we say make up our life. How am I acting now? Maybe it's pretty good, but maybe it's different from what I know that my ideal future self would be doing. I think that's a cool little exercise to do. It sparks some insight maybe into changes that you might want to make. It helps you think about just the direction that you're moving through in life, gets you out of your autopilot, gets you back into taking responsibility and out of victim mentality if there's some part of your life that is not expressing in the way that you really want it to be. If there's some part of you that feels like I could respect myself more if I was clearer about what that would actually mean I was doing day to day and what it meant that I was not doing. And I think that on the level of behavior change, there's some gains to be made here. But I also feel that this is a trap that a lot of coaching and a lot of self-development leads us into that's kind of superficial, because we can come up with all the strategies for changing that we want that are just purely behavioral. We could think of ourselves as behaviorists. It's just we got to do these things and not these things. But in my experience in my life and working with clients, what I've seen is that it's sort of just mental masturbation at a certain point, and maybe even a way to avoid doing the deeper work that would lead to the kinds of shifts where those things that we can identify that our new self is doing would be happening fairly effortlessly and as a side effect of us having changed something deeper within. And so in this episode, I want to go into one of the key aspects that I see as needing to be worked with and understood in order for identity change to be simpler. And that is looking more closely at protector parts. Protectors, in the language of internal family systems, are parts of the psyche of the unconscious who came into being during periods of time in which there was some threat to our wholeness, to our integrity. And often what they will do is throw up some kind of barrier between something that is deemed as inappropriate, too much, or unsuitable for your survival. And so I want to give a personal example. So when I was young, when I was coming up, when I was a teen, I experienced from my primary caregiver, from my mom, a feeling like maybe it wasn't safe for her, for me to express my burgeoning sexuality, for me to step into being really what is natural at that time, to express one's burgeoning sexuality as a adolescent teenager. And that came through in just like some squeamishness that I felt coming from her when I had girlfriends, and other sort of implicit, not overly explicit, but implicit messages coming from her that made me feel like it was not okay for me to express this power that was coming online. And I really identify with having a man's sexuality is really about his power, because it's his power to create in the world. And it's not just about sex, not just about connecting, it's not just about intimacy. It's really the source of a man's ability to create in the world a result that he would like, his power. to embody being powerful, to embody going after something. There's a link between the sexuality, between personal power, between ability to create. So when I was young, that was kind of a message I received, was that it was not okay to be powerful in that way. And so that all kind of got bottled up and sequestered away behind a protector part in my psyche that basically wanted to keep me in my primary caregiver relationship with my mother safe. And that interpreted, if this power comes out, then you may rupture that relationship. And then you really will be fucked because you won't have, what you need. Because I'm 12, 13, 14 at the time, right? So I'm not taking care of myself yet. I need that caregiving. So my psyche very naturally, automatically and unconsciously puts that caregiving relationship first in front of this other piece of me, which is really authentic and part of my soul, part of my full self. But it puts that behind a barrier because it interprets expressing that as unsafe. And by no means is this something unique to me or for some reason making me special. Like, this is a garden variety way in which a person's power or otherwise fullness gets sequestered away. And you may have different events in your past, in your childhood, in your adolescence that forced something very important to you to be put behind a wall, be behind a protector. Now, why is this important for where we started, which is like we want to do things in the world and become the person that we want to be. We want to do the things that we can identify as the things that our ideal man self, our ideal future self would do. Because without access to this source of personal power that has been often sequestered behind protectors, whenever we go to take new action, we are going to experience resistance. And for guys who don't have this language or this frame, that resistance is treated as the enemy. And then we get into this really complex, self-flagellating, self-violent loop where whatever action we take is coming from hardness and self-aggression. You see this in people like David Goggins. There's just so much self-hatred that has to push and drive the system forward and try to deal with the resistance, because fundamentally there's another part that we're at war with inside, which is our protector part, right? So rather than that, if we want to be able to actually step into taking the actions that we would see our future self taking, rather than flagellating ourselves when we're not able to do that, we need to slow down and look at this system, because there's something in this that's actually trying to protect us and help us, even if it is doing so in a very outdated way, in a way that was adaptive at the time, in my case, to protect my primary caregiving relationship, but is now completely outdated. We need to slow down and see the symptoms of dissociation, distraction, fear, anxiety, things that come up when we contemplate taking new action, as a feature and not a bug. It's a feature because it's saying to us, oh, you're coming up against this thing that in the past, if you expressed, was actually very dangerous to the whole system. Don't do that. So we're going to distract you. We're going to dissociate you. We're going to overcomplicate what it would mean to move forward. There's all kinds of tricks. I don't like calling them tricks, but methods that this protective system will employ. It will even employ dreams. In Trauma and the Soul by Donald Kalshed, he talks about how we have this self-care system, which will express the need to protect us in ways that are sometimes like quite violent dreams or nightmares. And it's basically a system like saying, get away from this. You don't want to come toward this, because if you do, like, bad things will happen for the whole system. It's a legit response, but it's outdated. So once we see that resistance not as something to fight, but as something that we can understand as ultimately having a protective mechanism that was set up in the past for a good reason. Now all of this self-hatred, all of this self-flagellation can fall away because we don't need to relate to ourselves like that. We can relate to ourselves instead from a place of love. And we can start relating to this protector part from more of our capital S self energy, which is fundamentally an adult, individuated, self-parenting consciousness that can sit in that and see this dynamic for what it is and understand it and not be perturbed by it, right? So in my case, what I had to do was, as I started taking action that my future self would take, I had to really notice that there are these responses, these somatic responses, these mental responses, and sometimes very unconscious responses like, oh, there's this thing I've identified that I need to do in order to move my business forward. Instead of doing that, I'm going to do all these other things because that's just what I feel like doing. I had to see that that's actually this protective part manifesting and trying to protect me from fully stepping into power and embodying it, because it sees that as a threat. Now I know that it's not a threat. And I also know that I need to treat that with love. I need to contain it like I would a small child. I need to father myself. I need to parent myself. So when I would experience those, and I still experience those things from time to time, I have to come to it and see, oh, this is that protector part wanting to keep me safe. I have to relate to it. I can't shove it away. I can't try and kill it. I can't do any self-aggressive action. I have to relate to it and basically talk to it and update it to the fact that I am now no longer in danger of some existential threat to my survival by compromising my relationship with my mother, by making my mother feel unsafe, or by making my mother feel uncomfortable. There's no threat to me at all by stepping into power, by me doing that. There's no threat to my survival because I'm now an adult and not 12, 13, 14 years old. But often the parts do not believe that. They may be like, no, I know what age we are, right? And it takes like this slow but steady relating and convincing and really ultimately helping to make feel safe this protector part, so that it knows like, no, we're here now, we're all good, and actually you can stand down. And often one of the best questions to ask that part at that moment is, would you like another job? Would you like to support this thriving? I know that you really care about us thriving. Would you be interested in helping that happen? Because now I'm here, I'm on the scene, right? It goes into another really key phrase that I heard from a client around this. He said, I needed to become the person that I didn't have when I was young. I need to step into that. And that's what the work is about, is becoming the adult self who was not able to basically see the situation for what it was. In my case, perhaps somebody being like, this is actually not a threat. It's safe to step into fully expressing your sexuality, and by extension, all the other ways that you would show up and be seen powerfully going after what it is that you want. And, but I didn't have that. And it's not really a problem because through our trials, we are shaped into who we need to be in the world, maybe in like a larger destiny way. But by looking at it that way, we're like, okay, but I see it now. And so I'm going to have a different relationship to it. I'm going to contain it. I'm going to update it. I'm going to help it see that it can have a different job in my life, this protector part. And by doing that, the thing behind it, which is the power, which has been exiled, is able to start coming back into the life. And these responses of fear, anxiety, dissociation, distraction start getting less and less and less and less and less. And more you're able to move towards what it is that you know your future self would be doing with less resistance, right? But most people do not see it this way. They just feel resistance inside. It feels really bad, and they have to go to war with it. And it just creates so much tension and so much waste of energy because they're not able to see actually the way forward is by containing oneself, containing one's younger parts with love, and essentially doming them with love. That's another phrase I love to use with myself and with clients, is like, you've got to dom yourself with love. You have to become the dom and help that other part submit to your love, right? But it's not from force, it's not from aggression that we're able to do that. But after a period of time, as we continue to take action, because we can't allow ourselves to just be in our head about this and allow this to become another excuse to not move forward, to be the people that we want to. As we continue to take action, as we can continue to track those somatic responses that come up as we move forward and treat them with love, containment, slow down with them, understand their source, understand why they're coming up out of a desire from this part of our psyche to protect us. As we come into that, everything can just continue to be diffused, and we can continue taking our forward moving action. And then we can come back to those questions of, really, who would I be? What would I be doing? What behaviors would I be exhibiting? What things would I not be doing if I were the man that I really respected? We can come back to those questions with a completely different perspective and way of acting ultimately, because you're not going to get out of resistance. The resistance is always going to be there. And rather than blunt forcing our way through, or seeing it as an enemy, or seeing it as a war, instead we have a more sophisticated, nuanced way of containing that resistance such that it's not a problem, such actually we can retrieve that energy for putting to use of where we want to go. And it really is a soul retrieval process, because when we're younger, that self that was not allowed to express fully and wholly in its integrity, in its full self, that part of ourself that was cut off is allowed to come back in. And that represents such a huge retrieval of energy, such a huge retrieval of authenticity, of power, ultimately. And when we're acting with that fullness of ourselves online, we no longer have to force, we no longer have to be in a war. And that's really where a lot of the juice happens, right? A lot of the flow starts to happen through life, because now instead of forcing, we're flowing, because our full self is allowed to be present. So I hope that's helpful, just in terms of thinking about, we all want to be somebody. I think we all want to feel more of an expanded sense of ourselves. We all want to be able to move into this future that we're inspired by and enthusiastic about. And we can see how this new self would act differently. But rather than just forcing our way towards that, we can relate to that resistance that will inevitably come up from a place of love and from understanding it as a simple desire on the part of a younger adaptation that existed for a very good reason, which was to keep us safe, but that now has basically grown out of usefulness and is outdated, and now we can allow it to dissolve slowly but surely with love. So if you're trying to reinvent yourself, that frame of understanding protectors, understanding what's behind it, which is that exiled power that really you are learning to retrieve. Once you have that power online, you'll be able to move forward in your life towards being this person who you respect and love, because ultimately you are that already. That's the key. It's just the actions that you take will express that in the world. So if you're interested in doing this work on a deeper level, that's what I do with men. See below an opportunity to book a call with me if you want to talk about where you're at in your life, and maybe you're on the cusp or a threshold of making a big change, moving from more of this adaptational, provisional self, whether you've succeeded in life, whether you've created results in the outside world, but maybe not found that internal alignment, moving from that into feeling really at one and aligned, and living ultimately from this integrated self. That's the work that I do with men. So maybe book a call, and in the meantime, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.